It was her first time flying alone. 18-year-old Sana Malik pressed her forehead against the cold airplane window, watching as the city lights of Dubai shimmered beneath her like tiny golden stars. The engines of Flight 227 roared softly as the jet prepared for takeoff, and her heart fluttered with a mix of fear and excitement. For 2 years, Sana had lived away from home, studying and working part-time in Dubai. This trip was meant to be a surprise visit. Her mother in Karachi thought she'd be returning next month. Sana couldn't wait to see the look on her face when she walked through the door unannounced, carrying her favorite flowers and a small chocolate cake she'd ordered to pick up at the airport. The plane began to taxi toward the runway. Passengers were still finding their seats. Flight attendants moved gracefully through the aisles, and a baby cried softly somewhere near the back. Sana adjusted her seatbelt, glancing at the middle-aged woman beside her, who smiled warmly and said, "First time flying alone?" Sana nodded shyly. "Yes, I've flown before, but never without family." The woman chuckled. "You'll be fine, dear. Just close your eyes when it takes off. Feels like a fast car on the clouds." Sana smiled, comforted by the stranger's kindness. The captain's voice came over the speakers. "Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff." The plane began to accelerate. Her stomach tightened as the force pushed her back into her seat, and within moments, the world outside tilted. Dubai's glowing skyline faded beneath a blanket of clouds. As the jet leveled out, Sana took a deep breath and leaned back. The hum of the engines became steady, almost soothing. She looked around. Passengers scrolling through phones, some already drifting to sleep. A man reading quietly by the aisle light. Sana pulled out a small, worn-out diary, its corners bent, the cover decorated with little silver stars. It was her travel journal, filled with sketches, thoughts, and quotes that had kept her company through long nights away from home. She uncapped her pen and wrote on a fresh page. "This flight feels like freedom." She paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. For her, this wasn't just a journey home. It was a step toward independence, toward the adult life she had always dreamed of. Through the oval window, she could see the moonlight glinting on the airplane's silver wing. It looked peaceful, almost unreal, a machine gliding effortlessly through the sky. She smiled softly, unaware that somewhere deep inside the plane's control system, a small indicator light had just turned red, unnoticed, silent but dangerous. Sana tucked her diary away, closed her eyes and whispered a quiet prayer of gratitude. The engines hummed like a lullaby. The stars above seemed close enough to touch, and for the first time in months, she felt at peace. She had no idea what was coming next. 30 minutes had passed since takeoff. The seatbelt sign had been switched off, and most passengers were relaxed, sipping tea, watching movies, or staring dreamily out the windows. Sana leaned back, earphones in, lost in a song that reminded her of home. The rhythm of the engines was steady, comforting, a sound she'd already grown used to. Then, without warning, the plane trembled. At first, it was just a mild shake, the kind that made people glance up for a moment, smile nervously, and continue what they were doing. Turbulence was common, everyone knew that. But within seconds, the gentle shudder became a violent jolt. The overhead compartments rattled, drinks spilled, and a few gasps echoed through the cabin. The seatbelt sign blinked on again. Fasten seatbelts immediately. Sana's heart began to race. The air felt heavier, charged with unease. She looked out the window. Clouds swirled in a gray blur as the plane pitched slightly to one side. A child started crying in the next row. The woman beside Sana clutched her armrest, whispering prayers under her breath. Then came a sharp bang, a sound so loud it silenced everything for a second. The lights flickered. Trays fell. The plane dropped suddenly, as if the sky had opened beneath it. People screamed. Oxygen masks fell from the ceiling with a hiss. Some passengers fumbled to grab them. Others froze, paralyzed by shock. Sana's fingers trembled as she pulled one toward her and slipped it over her face. The rubber smell sharp and suffocating. Then, the captain's voice, calm but strained, crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We are experiencing a technical failure. Please stay seated and wear your oxygen masks." But calm was impossible. The plane jolted again, harder this time. The right side dipped lower, and through the small round window, Sana saw something she'd never forget. Flames. Orange light flickered against the engine, smoke trailing into the dark sky. Oh my God. A woman screamed, clutching her baby tight. A man tried to reach for the call button, shouting for help. But the flight attendants were already moving quickly, securing the aisles, their faces pale but determined. Sana's body felt weightless 1 second, then crushed by gravity the next as the jet tilted and dropped. The sound of the wind outside grew deafening, a hollow roar that filled every space. She gripped the armrest, her knuckles white, whispering, "Please, please, please." The plane seemed to spin slightly, not in a full spiral yet, but enough to make people lose balance and panic. Alarms blared from the cockpit, a sharp beeping that mixed with crying, shouting, and the desperate hum of prayers. The air smelled of fuel. Something metallic, something wrong. Sana looked up, seeing a flight attendant trying to reach the intercom, but the turbulence threw her to her knees. Without thinking, Sana unbuckled, grabbed the woman's hand, and helped her up. The attendant's voice shook as she yelled into the mic, "Everyone, stay seated. Keep your masks on." The passengers obeyed, trembling. Outside the window, lightning flashed in the clouds. Inside, fear filled every corner. And for the first time in her life, Sana realized how close the sky was to the edge of eternity. Flight 227 was no longer flying. It was falling. The world tilted sharply, and in a blink, the calm cabin turned into chaos. Trays, bags, and papers flew through the air like a storm inside a metal cage. The once steady hum of the engines was now replaced by roaring wind and mechanical screams. Passengers cried out, some praying loudly, others frozen in silent terror. The flight attendants, though terrified themselves, tried desperately to follow procedure, shouting over the alarms, "Heads down! Stay seated! Masks on!" But the plane wasn't listening. It jerked violently again, throwing people forward. Sana felt her stomach twist as gravity seemed to disappear. Her seatbelt strained against her chest, cutting into her ribs. For a split second, she thought the belt might snap. An old man beside her, his hands trembling, face pale as paper, gasped for air. Sana reached for him instinctively, clutching his hand. "Hold on. We're going to be okay," she whispered, even though her voice shook. She didn't believe her own words, but saying them made her feel less helpless. The jet plunged again. Oxygen masks swung wildly like pendulums. Loose luggage tumbled down the aisles. A child screamed, calling for her mother. Someone in the back cried, "We're going down!" Outside the window, the sky was a nightmare. Lightning slashed through dark clouds, illuminating sheets of rain hammering against the wings. For a terrifying moment, the right wing dipped so low that Sana thought it might snap clean off. A blinding flash of light filled the cabin, followed by a deep rumble, thunder so close it felt like the heavens were splitting apart. Sana squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping free. She thought of her mother, of the birthday cake waiting at home, of the diary in her bag, maybe the last thing she'd ever write in. Then she heard shouting near the front. One of the flight attendants had been thrown off balance and was struggling to reach the emergency intercom. Her hair whipped across her face as she crawled toward it, gripping seat backs to pull herself up. But another jolt sent her crashing to the floor. Without a thought for her own safety, Sana unbuckled her seatbelt. The plane lurched again, nearly throwing her sideways, but she grabbed onto the seats and forced herself forward. The aisle felt endless, filled with floating cups, bags, and the echo of terrified cries. She reached the attendant and helped her up, gripping her arm tightly. Their eyes met, both filled with fear, yet something steady passed between them. "Thank you," the woman gasped, slamming the intercom button. "Everyone, brace position! Heads down, hold tight!" The words echoed through the cabin, pulling people out of panic and into instinct. Sana stumbled back into her seat, buckled up again, heart hammering like a drum. The aircraft still spun, but slightly slower now. The pilots were fighting it, wrestling gravity for control. Rain streaked across the windows, Lightning flickered in the distance, and for a fleeting moment, Sana saw her reflection, pale, trembling, but alive. And though she didn't know it yet, that one moment of courage, standing up when no one else could, would change everything that came after. The storm still raged outside, rain pelting against the fuselage like stones. Inside, the air was thick with fear and hope. The captain's voice finally broke through the static of the intercom, calm but strained. "This is your captain speaking. We've managed to stabilize the left engine. We are attempting an emergency landing in Muscat. Please remain seated and brace for impact." The words hit like thunder. Some cried openly, others folded their hands in prayer. Sana gripped the old man's hand beside her, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. The flight attendants moved swiftly down the aisle, checking belts, securing loose items, and giving instructions that no one wanted to hear. "Heads down. Brace position. Stay calm." Sana looked around. A young mother rocking her baby, a man whispering verses under his breath, two teenagers holding each other's hands tightly. Fear united them all. When one passenger began sobbing uncontrollably, Sana reached over and said softly, "Look at me. Breathe. We're almost there." Her voice, though trembling, carried strength. A few others listened, following her lead. It wasn't much, but it helped. Outside, flashes of lightning revealed glimpses of the runway lights below, a narrow strip of salvation between the darkness and the sea. The jet dipped lower. The engines whined, straining against gravity. The captain and co-pilot fought every second, trying to keep the wounded aircraft steady. One engine was completely dead, the other barely holding on. The landing gear, jammed from the earlier shock, refused to deploy. "Landing gear malfunction," a voice shouted in the cockpit. "Then we'll do it on the belly," the captain replied. The ground rushed up to meet them. The cabin filled with the sound of alarms, the hiss of hydraulics, and the desperate silence of people holding their breath. Sana pressed her forehead against the seat in front of her, whispering a single word, "Please." Then, the impact came. Boom, screech, thud. The plane hit the runway hard, sliding across it, sparks exploding from beneath the fuselage. The lights flickered violently. Overhead bins burst open, luggage tumbling out. The metal groaned, a deep, terrifying sound that echoed like the end of the world. Smoke filled the cabin. People screamed, then coughed, then held on tighter as the plane skidded. And finally, after what felt like eternity, came to a stop. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, someone began to cry. Another person laughed shakily. Applause erupted, desperate, trembling applause that turned into sobs and prayers. The doors opened. Emergency lights flashed. Flight attendants guided people out onto the wet runway, where flashing red trucks and rescue crews waited. Sana helped the old man beside her unbuckle and walk toward the exit. Her knees shook, but she didn't let go until he was safe. As she stepped out into the cold night air, rain mixing with tears, she turned back to look at Flight 227, the jet that should have been their tomb, now resting quietly under the storm. Reporters later called her the girl who gave courage to Flight 227. They said she inspired others to stay calm, to believe, to survive. But when asked how she did it, Sana just smiled faintly and said, "I wasn't brave. I just didn't want to be afraid anymore." The camera lights flickered. The world would move on. But for the 148 souls who lived through that night, Flight 227 would never just be a flight. It would be the moment they learned how fragile and how powerful a single heartbeat can be.